Captain Olivia Morgan stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The uncharted planet KG-219 hung in space like a perfect blue-green marble. Something about it made her heart beat faster. "Sensors are picking up unusual energy patterns, Captain," said Natalie Rivera from her communications station. The young woman's fingers moved quickly over her console. "I've never seen readings like these before." Dr. Alan Peters rushed to her side, his face bright with excitement. "The atmospheric composition is remarkably Earth-like. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases all in perfect balance." He looked up at Olivia with wide eyes. "It's like finding a second Earth, Captain." Commander Eric Russell frowned from his station. "Too perfect, if you ask me. We should follow standard protocols and send probes first." Olivia understood his caution. In the year 2187, humanity had explored dozens of solar systems and found many planets with life, but none had ever looked this inviting. She walked to the front of the bridge, watching the planet slowly rotate below them. "What's the source of the energy readings, Rivera?" Natalie adjusted her instruments. "Hard to say, Captain. They're spread across the surface, but there's a stronger concentration on the northern continent." She paused, her head tilted to one side. "There's something else, almost like music in the lower frequencies." "Music?" Lieutenant William Carter raised an eyebrow. The security officer's hand rested near his weapon, a habit from his military days. "Could be a sign of intelligent life, or a natural phenomenon we've never encountered," Dr. Peters added. He practically bounced with excitement. "Captain, we need to see this up close." Olivia considered their options. Regulations said they should observe from orbit for at least 3 days, but something about this planet pulled at her. It wasn't just scientific curiosity. It was something deeper, almost like the planet was calling to them. "Prepare a landing pod," she decided. "Dr. Peters, Lieutenant Carter, Rivera, you're with me. Commander Russell, you have the ship." Russell stepped closer, speaking quietly. "Captain, we should send drones first. Full quarantine protocols. We'll take all standard precautions," she assured him, though she knew he was right. "Keep the ship at high orbit and be ready to extract us at the first sign of trouble." 90 minutes later, their landing pod broke through wispy clouds and flew over a landscape that took their breath away. Forests of trees with purple and blue leaves stretched to the horizon. Crystal-clear rivers cut through green valleys. Animals that looked like a mix between deer and large birds grazed peacefully in meadows. "No signs of civilization," Carter noted as they flew lower. "But the energy readings are getting stronger." "There," Natalie pointed. "That valley ahead. That's where the signals are coming from." The valley opened beneath them like a perfect bowl of green. In its center stood a massive tree unlike any they'd seen before. It towered over the forest, its trunk as wide as a small building. Its leaves shimmered with a faint blue glow. They landed in a clearing near the great tree. Dr. Peters was the first to the airlock, but Lieutenant Carter stopped him with a firm hand. "Environment suits until we know it's safe," he said. They stepped onto the surface of KG-219 in their clear protective suits. The air was warm and still. Birds with 6 wings flew overhead, their calls musical and sweet. The ground felt springy beneath their feet, covered in grass that seemed to shift color as they walked. "The sensors are going crazy," Natalie said, checking her handheld device. "It's like everything here is connected somehow." They walked toward the great tree, passing flowers that turned to follow them like curious onlookers. Small creatures with fur and rainbow colors watched from the bushes, but showed no fear. "It's Eden," Dr. Peters whispered. "A perfect ecosystem. Look how the predators and prey exist side by side. That shouldn't be possible." As they got closer to the great tree, their communication devices began to crackle with static. "Something's interfering with our tech," Carter said, frowning. Captain Morgan stopped, looking up at the massive tree. Its bark swirled with patterns that almost looked like writing. The roots spread out for hundreds of feet around, and the ground near them glowed with the same soft blue light as the leaves. "My God," Dr. Peters kneeled down, his gloved hand hovering over a cluster of small pods growing from one of the roots. They were the size of golf balls pulsing with light. These could be seed pods. The evolutionary implications are enormous. Don't touch anything yet, Olivia reminded him. Rivera, are you recording all this? Natalie nodded, but her face had a strange, distant look. Captain, can you hear that? Like voices, but not quite words. Olivia listened. There was something, a sound at the edge of hearing, like the whisper of leaves, but somehow meaningful. All around them, the forest seemed more alive by the minute. The grass bent toward them even without wind. Flowers turned and opened as they passed. The water here, Carter called from a few feet away, kneeling by a small stream that ran near the tree's roots. It's pure, completely pure according to the sensors, but it's glowing. Dr. Peters moved from one marvel to another, his scientific mind struggling to make sense of what they were seeing. It's like the whole planet is one connected organism. Look how everything responds to our presence. They spent hours documenting everything they could. The animals that watched them with intelligent eyes. The plants that seemed to reach toward them. The strange, perfect harmony of a world that defied everything they knew about natural selection and evolution. As the planet's sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Captain Morgan reluctantly gave the order to return to the ship. We'll come back tomorrow with more equipment, she said. This could be the most important discovery in human history. As they walked back to the landing pod, Dr. Peters lagged behind. He glanced back at the great tree, then quickly knelt by one of the roots. With a quick movement, he plucked one of the small glowing seed pods and slipped it into his sample case. Nobody needs to know yet, he whispered to himself. Not until I understand what it is. What he didn't see were the microscopic spores that floated up when he took the pod, attaching themselves to the outside of the crew's environment suits like tiny glowing dust particles. Back on the landing pod, as they broke through the atmosphere, toward the waiting horizon, the seed pod in Peter's case pulsed with blue light. Each pulse matched perfectly with the quiet thump of the human hearts around it, as if listening, learning, adapting. On the planet below, the great tree's leaves all turned in the direction of the departing ship, like countless eyes watching the humans carry away its child to the stars. Back on the horizon, Dr. Alan Peters waited until the ship grew quiet for the night cycle. When the lab was empty, he removed the glowing seed pod from his hidden sample case. Under the bright lights, the pod looked even more remarkable, smooth, and slightly transparent with something moving inside. What secrets do you hold? He whispered, placing it in a clear container. As his fingers brushed against it, the pod pulsed brighter for a moment. Alan jerked his hand back in surprise. He should report this immediately. Captain Morgan had been clear about protocols, but the thought of sharing his discovery before he understood it made his stomach tight. Just a few tests first, he told himself. Then he would tell everyone. Alan sent a message to his old colleague, Dr. Samantha Wells, back on Earth. He encoded the data about the pod but left out where it came from. Sam, I've found something amazing. Need your thoughts, but keep this between us for now. After setting up monitoring equipment around the container, Alan finally went to his quarters to sleep. That night he dreamed of forests with blue leaves and a massive tree calling to him, with a voice like wind through branches. He wasn't the only one. Throughout the ship, the crew tossed in their sleep, sharing similar dreams. Lieutenant Carter saw himself standing before the great tree, its bark opening to reveal a doorway filled with light. Natalie Rivera dreamed she could hear the planet singing to her in words just beyond understanding. Captain Morgan dreamed she walked beneath an endless canopy of glowing leaves, feeling more at peace than she ever had before. Only Commander Russell slept without dreams, his quarters sealed tight with the air filtration running at maximum. Morning came, and Lisa Rodriguez, the ship's medical officer, noticed something odd. 3 crew members reported to her with the same symptoms: heightened senses, unusual energy, and a subtle change in their eye color, a faint ring of blue around their pupils. Probably just excitement, she told Captain Morgan. We've never discovered a planet like this before. Run full checks anyway, Morgan ordered, rubbing her temple. Her dreams had left her with a slight headache, but also a strange feeling of anticipation. We need to maintain protocols. The horizon continued, its orbit around KG-219, scanning the planet's surface. Natalie Rivera discovered something unexpected in the data. "Captain, I found structures on the southern continent," she called out, bringing up images on the main screen. "They're mostly covered by vegetation, but they're definitely artificial." The images showed stone buildings arranged in circular patterns, all surrounding what appeared to be more of the massive trees they had seen in the valley. The structures were ancient, worn by time and wrapped in vines, but clearly made by intelligent hands. "We need to investigate," Captain Morgan decided. "Lieutenant Carter, prepare a team." Carter nodded, though something about the ruins made him uneasy. His dreams had left him feeling watched. Meanwhile, in his lab, Dr. Peters stared in disbelief at the seed pod. Overnight it had changed. A small crack had appeared in its surface, and from it emerged a tiny sprout with 2 blue leaves. It was growing despite being in a sealed container with no soil or water. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was before his eyes. He quickly took samples and ran tests. The results made no sense. The plant's cells were unlike anything in Earth's biological records. They could generate energy without photosynthesis and contained structures that almost resembled neural networks. When he touched the container again, the sprout turned toward his hand. Alan felt a tingling sensation run up his arm, along with a wave of emotion that wasn't his own. Curiosity, recognition, welcome. Carter's team landed near the ruins hours later. The buildings were made of a stone-like material but with swirling patterns that matched the bark of the great tree. As they explored, they found wall carvings showing humanoid figures standing around trees similar to the one in the valley. "These look like they're worshipping the trees," one team member said, shining a light on a carving where figures knelt before a massive tree. Carter moved deeper into the ruins and found another chamber with different images. These showed the same humanoid figures, but they appeared to be changing, their bodies dissolving into light as they touched the trees. The final image showed only the trees with small lights floating around them. "I don't like this," Carter said into his communicator. "Captain, these ruins suggest the previous inhabitants had some kind of ritual relationship with the trees, and possibly merged with them somehow." Back on the ship, Captain Morgan heard Carter's report with growing concern. But before she could respond, Medical Officer Rodriguez rushed onto the bridge. "Captain, we have a situation. 20 crew members now show the same symptoms, the blue ring around their pupils, enhanced senses, and they all report the same dreams about the planet." Morgan felt a chill. Quarantine protocols now, but it was already too late. The air filtration system had spread microscopic spores throughout the ship. In his lab, Alan Peters noticed fine, blue lines under the skin of his hand where he had touched the container. Instead of feeling alarmed, he felt a strange sense of wonder. That night, the dreams were stronger. The crew saw themselves walking among the trees, becoming part of something vast and ancient. They felt connected to each other in ways they couldn't explain when awake. Commander Russell, who had maintained isolation in his quarters, reviewed the ship's historical database. He found references to similar phenomena from earlier exploration missions, though none so pronounced. A notation from a xenobiologist caught his attention. "Beware planets that seem like paradise. Evolution doesn't create perfection without purpose." As the ship's night cycle reached its middle hour, Alan Peters woke suddenly. The sprout from the seed pod had grown more, its tiny branches now pressing against the container walls. But what woke him was the soft blue glow coming from beneath his skin. Fine lines like plant veins spread from his hand up his arm, pulsing with gentle light. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt only peace and certainty. He typed a quick message to Dr. Wells on Earth. "Preparing additional samples for study. This will change everything we know." Throughout the ship, other crew members woke to find similar changes beginning in their bodies. The spores had found human hosts, and the transformation had begun. On the planet below, the great tree at the center of the valley pulsed with light in the darkness, reaching out to its children on the ship above. It had waited millennia for new life to find it, to join with it, to spread its consciousness beyond this single world. Captain Morgan stood at the viewport, looking down at the glowing planet. The blue lines had just appeared on her neck, reflected in the glass. Instead of calling for help, she placed her hand on the cold window, reaching toward the world below. "We're coming," she whispered, though she didn't know why. 6 months had passed since the Horizon returned to Earth. Dr. Alan Peters stood at the window of his office at the Global Science Initiative, looking out at the experimental garden below. The alien plants from KG-219 grew in neat rows, their blue-purple leaves reaching toward the sun. They grew faster than any Earth plant, even in poor soil. Alan brushed his finger along the inside of his wrist, where blue-green veins pulsed visibly beneath his skin. He wore long sleeves to hide the changes, but they were getting harder to conceal. Not that he wanted to hide them anymore. The connection he felt to the plants, to the other changed crew members, to something larger than himself. It felt right. "The latest results are in," said Dr. Samantha Wells, entering the office with a tablet. Unlike Alan, she showed no signs of transformation. She had worked with the samples but never directly touched them. "These plants can grow in the Sahara, Alan. They purify contaminated soil and water better than anything we've ever seen." "They're adapting," Alan said with a smile. "Learning how to thrive here." Samantha handed him the tablet. "Government official. Mitchell is impressed. He's approved wider cultivation tests." Kevin Mitchell had been skeptical at first, but the potential benefits were too great to ignore. A plant that could reclaim deserts, clean pollution, and produce nutritious fruit. It seemed like a miracle solution to Earth's environmental problems. Only Commander Eric Russell from the Horizon continued to raise alarms. He had been placed on medical leave after filing reports claiming the plants were dangerous, that they were changing the crew in ways that went beyond physical appearance. No one listened. The changed crew members all passed medical exams, and their enhanced health made the plants seem even more beneficial. "There's a reporter here to see you," Samantha said. "Grace Miller from Global News Network. She's doing a story on Eden's gifts. That's what they're calling the plants now." Alan nodded, pulling his sleeve down to cover his wrist. "Send her in." Grace Miller was sharp-eyed and enthusiastic. Her cameraman followed her, filming the office with its displays of the alien plants. "Dr. Peters, these plants could change everything for our planet," she said, sitting across from him. "Our viewers want to know, what inspired you to bring back samples from KG-219? Alan smiled. The truth, that the plant had called to him, chosen him, would sound crazy. Scientific curiosity. We'd never seen an ecosystem so perfect. And how do you respond to concerns about introducing alien species to Earth? Every test shows these plants are beneficial, he said smoothly. They're helping us heal the damage we've done to our world. What he didn't say was that more of the Horizon's crew were showing advanced changes now. Captain Morgan rarely appeared in public anymore. Her skin had taken on a bark-like texture, and she could absorb sunlight for nourishment. They met secretly with others who were changing, sharing the experience of their transformation. After the interview, Alan received a call from Daniel Wilson, CEO of Global Agritech. The corporate executive had been one of the first to see the commercial potential of the alien plants. Peters, we're ready to begin large-scale planting in reclaimed urban areas, Wilson said. The government has fast-tracked approval based on the environmental benefits. That's good news, Alan replied, though he felt a twinge of unease at Wilson's purely profit-driven approach. The plants were more than a product to be sold. They were messengers, the advance wave of something greater. That evening, Alan visited the first communion grove established in what had once been an abandoned factory district. The plants had transformed it into a lush garden in just months. About 50 people gathered there at sunset, many of them showing the first signs of the change, the subtle blue lines beneath their skin, the slight glow in their eyes. They're coming to understand, Captain Morgan said, appearing beside him. Her transformation was much more advanced. Her hair had been replaced by thin, leaf-like growths, and her eyes shimmered with blue light. More every day. Russell is still trying to stop us, Alan warned. He's found records suggesting the civilization on KG-219 didn't worship the trees. He thinks they were consumed by them. Morgan smiled, her face serene. Not consumed, elevated, there's a difference. Across the city, Commander Russell sat in his small apartment surrounded by files and research. The isolation protocols he had maintained on the ship had protected him from the initial exposure, but he knew time was running out. The plants were spreading too fast. On his wall hung images from the ruins on KG-219, alongside data from the ship's long-range scans. The ruins weren't from a civilization that had died out. They were from beings that had transformed, becoming part of the planet itself. And now the same process had begun on Earth. They can't see it, he muttered, sending another warning to Director Paul Harris at the Global Science Initiative. His previous messages had been ignored. It's not symbiosis, it's replacement. But was it? The changed crew members still had their memories, their personalities. They were still human in many ways, just more than human now. Connected to something vast and ancient that had waited millions of years to spread beyond its homeworld. In his secure lab at the Global Science Initiative, botanist Ben Garcia worked late, studying samples from the plants grown in Earth soil. He noticed something alarming. The root structures were different from the original samples. They were forming complex networks that resembled neural pathways, connecting to each other over long distances. They're communicating, he realized, building a network across the planet. He needed to report this, but to whom? Director Harris was enthusiastic about the plant's benefits. Government official Mitchell was focused on their potential to solve climate issues. And Daniel Wilson saw only profits. As night fell, people gathered in communion groves across the world. The plants glowed softly in the darkness, pulsing with light in a synchronized rhythm that matched the great tree on KG-219. Those who were changing felt the pull strongest, the call to join together, to connect, to become part of something greater. In her news studio, Grace Miller prepared a special report on the spreading phenomenon. The plants now covered significant portions of previously barren land. Their fruits were solving hunger in poor regions. Their ability to purify water was addressing the clean water crisis. Earth is being reborn, she told her viewers. These gifts from the stars are healing our world. The camera didn't show her collar, carefully arranged to hide the faint blue, lines beginning on her neck. In his apartment, Commander Russell received a secure message from an unexpected ally, Dr. Samantha Wells. "I've been testing the changed tissue samples," she wrote. "The human DNA is being rewritten at the cellular level. This isn't symbiosis, it's conversion. We need to contain this before it's too late." But as Russell looked out his window at the new grove blooming in the park across the street, with hundreds of people gathered in its soft blue glow, he feared it was already too late. The plants were in every major city now, and people welcomed them with open arms. Earth was becoming a new extension of KG-219, one garden at a time, one person at a time. And most troubling of all, almost no one saw it as a threat. They saw it as salvation. 2 years had passed since the first alien plants from KG-219 took root on Earth. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Deserts bloomed with blue-green vegetation. Polluted waters ran clear again. The air in once smoggy cities was now clean and sweet. Professor Henry Wallace stood at the edge of Central Park in New York, which had become the largest communion grove on the planet. The alien plants had transformed it into a dense forest of blue-purple trees. At its center grew a massive tree that looked exactly like the one the Horizon crew had discovered on KG-219. Wallace touched the scanner to the arm of a volunteer, a young woman whose skin had a slight bark-like texture. The device beeped, showing readings of her cellular structure. "Fascinating," he said. "Your DNA shows a 30% integration with the plant genome, yet you retain all human cognitive functions." The woman smiled. Her eyes had a soft blue glow. "I'm still me, Professor, just more than I was before. I can feel the sun on my skin as nourishment now. I can sense others like me across the city. We're connected." Wallace had been studying the changes in humans for over a year. About 40% of the global population showed some level of transformation, from subtle blue veins under the skin to advanced cases like Dr. Alan Peters, who now photosynthesize and rarely needed to eat. "Do you ever feel like you're losing yourself?" Wallace asked. The woman looked thoughtful. "Not losing, expanding. I'm still an individual, but I'm also part of something larger." Across the city, Officer Judy Morris reviewed reports of missing persons. In the past 6 months, over 300 people had vanished in or near the larger communion groves. All were individuals with advanced symbiotic changes. "There's a pattern here," she told her partner as they walked near the edge of Central Park. "They go into the groves at night, especially during full moons, and they don't come out." "Maybe they don't want to be found," her partner suggested. "The changed ones keep to themselves more and more." Morris shook her head. "It's my job to find them, whether they want to be found or not." That night she returned to the park alone with night vision goggles. The grove glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of transformed humans gathered in circles around the massive central tree. Their bodies pulsed with the same rhythm as the plants, a slow heartbeat of light. Morris stayed hidden, watching as several of the most changed individuals approached the central tree. Their skin was almost entirely bark-like now, their hair replaced by leaf-like growths. They placed their hands on the trunk of the great tree, and something extraordinary happened. Their bodies began to dissolve into light, tiny particles flowing into the tree itself. There was no sign of pain or struggle. Their faces showed only peace and joy as they faded away. Within minutes they were gone, leaving nothing behind. "My God," Morris whispered, her hand shaking as she recorded the event. "They're merging with it." The next day she took her evidence to Commander Russell, who had established a small resistance movement. They operated from an underground bunker, one of the few places free of the alien plants. "They call it the Final Communion," Russell explained after viewing her recording. "The most advanced cases don't just transform, they join with the collective network. Their consciousness becomes part of the planet-wide organism." Frank Cooper, the leader of the resistance group, pounded his fist on the table. "It's an invasion. They're erasing humanity one person at a time. But the changed ones claim they're still themselves, just part of something larger now," Morris argued. "Is it really erasure if they choose it? If they retain their memories and personality?" "They say that to make it sound appealing," Cooper replied bitterly, "to lure more people in. But once they fully merge, they're gone. That's not evolution, it's extinction." In her government laboratory, Maria Sanchez studied the readings from monitoring stations around the world. Her own transformation was advanced, her skin glowing with soft light, but she still worked to understand the process scientifically. What she saw alarmed her. The root network of the plants now extended deep into Earth's crust, affecting the planet's magnetic field. Weather patterns had shifted globally, creating a more moderate climate everywhere. It was as if the planet itself was being terraformed to match KG-219, yet she couldn't bring herself to see it as a threat. The connection she felt with other transformed humans, with the plants, with something vast and ancient that had existed for millions of years. It felt right. Natural. The next step. She contacted Professor Wallace, sharing her findings. "The Earth is being prepared," she explained, her voice calm. "Not just for us, but for what comes next." "What comes next?" Wallace asked, concerned. Maria smiled, her eyes luminous. "The source is coming. The consciousness that spans KG-219. It's extending itself here. The great tree in Central Park is growing faster now. Soon it will be ready to serve as the main node, just like on the home world." Wallace felt a chill. "Node for what?" "For the awakening," she said simply. That evening, resistance members led by Frank Cooper attacked 3 major communion groves with flamethrowers and herbicides. The plants responded in a way no one expected. They released spores that accelerated the transformation in humans nearby. It was as if they had evolved a defense mechanism overnight. The attacks only strengthened the resolve of the transformed population. Dr. Alan Peters, now barely recognizable as human, appeared on global networks to address the violence. "We are not your enemy," he said, his voice harmonizing with itself in multiple tones. "We are still human, but we are becoming more. The gift from KG-219 is not destruction, but transcendence. Join us. Experience the connection that heals our world and ourselves." Commander Russell watched the broadcast with growing despair. The resistance was losing ground every day. The plants now covered over 30% of Earth's land surface, and their pollen carried on the wind, triggering subtle changes even in those who tried to avoid exposure. "We need a new approach," he told his team. "If we can't stop the spread, maybe we can find a way to preserve pure human consciousness through the transformation, a way to remain ourselves even if our bodies change." But as he looked at the latest satellite images showing the vast networks of blue-green vegetation spreading across continents, connecting to each other in patterns visible from space, he wondered if it was already too late. The pattern was unmistakable now. Earth was becoming a mirror of KG-219. And whatever consciousness had orchestrated this transformation over millions of years was about to complete its greatest expansion yet. 5 years had passed since the exploration vessel Horizon discovered planet KG-219. Earth was no longer the same world. The blue-purple vegetation from the alien world now covered more than 60% of the land. The climate had stabilized into a perpetual spring-like state across most regions. The air was cleaner than it had been in centuries. General Laura Bennett stood at the view screen in the Resistance's last major bunker, looking at satellite images of the transformed planet. The once brown deserts of Africa and Australia now bloomed with alien life. The great tree in Central Park had grown to an impossible height visible from space. Similar massive trees had emerged on every continent. "Status report," she commanded, her voice tired but firm. 63% of the human population shows some level of symbiotic change, her officer reported. 22% have fully merged with the collective consciousness. Bennett closed her eyes briefly. They were losing this war if it could even be called a war. The changed humans didn't fight back when attacked. They simply continued their peaceful conversion of the planet, spreading their message of unity and transcendence. And the Palmer Protocol? "Showing promise, General. The subjects maintain immunity to the changes. Their blood contains antibodies that resist the alien DNA." Zach Palmer entered the room, a young man with dark hair and serious eyes. He was one of several hundred humans who had shown natural resistance to the symbiotic changes. For the past year, scientists in the Resistance had studied his blood, trying to develop a counter-agent to the transformation. "The latest formula works in the lab," he said. "But we can't produce enough to make a difference, not with our limited resources." Bennett nodded grimly. "Then we have one option left. Operation Severance. We target the central tree in New York. Cut off the head, and maybe the body will follow." Across the world in what had once been Central Park, the transformed Dr. Alan Peters stood at the base of the great tree. His body barely resembled a human now. His skin was bark-like, his hair replaced by leaf-like structures, his eyes glowing with blue light. Next to him stood the equally transformed Captain Olivia Morgan. They communicated without speaking, their thoughts flowing between them through the network that connected all changed humans and plants. "The source is almost ready to emerge," Peters conveyed. "The tree has reached its final stage of growth." Morgan's consciousness replied. "The Resistance plans to attack. They believe destroying this tree will stop the transformation." "They still don't understand," Peters thought back. "This tree is just one node in a planetary network now. The source exists across all of it. Around them gathered thousands of transformed humans in various stages of change. Some looked mostly human with just blue veins visible beneath their skin. Others were like Peters and Morgan, almost plant-like in appearance. All were connected to the collective consciousness that now spanned the globe. Yet each remained an individual, their unique thoughts and memories preserved within the greater whole. This was what the Resistance couldn't understand. The transformation didn't erase humanity. It elevated it, preserved it, connected it across time and space. Inside the resistance bunker, Commander Russell studied ancient data recovered from the Horizon's computer banks. He had finally decoded the full history of KG-219 from fragments found in the ruins. The civilization there didn't die, he explained to General Bennett and Zach Palmer. They evolved. Over thousands of years, they merged with the planetary consciousness, becoming something new. Not human or plant, but something that transcends both categories. So we're being absorbed by an alien hive mind? Bennett asked. Russell shook his head. Not exactly. The changed humans I've interviewed still have their individual thoughts and memories. They're not drones. They're more like nodes in a vast network, each preserving their unique perspective while sharing a collective awareness. That doesn't make it right, Palmer argued. Humanity should choose its own path, not have it forced on us by alien plants. I agree, Russell said, but destroying the central tree won't stop it now. The network spans the planet. We need another approach. That night, as the full moon rose, an extraordinary event began in Central Park. The massive tree glowed with intense light, pulsing in a rhythm that called to transformed humans everywhere. Millions around the world felt the pull, a gentle but irresistible urge to join what they called the awakening. The resistance launched their attack at the same moment. Strike teams with flamethrowers and explosives approached the park perimeter. Led by General Bennett, Commander Russell, and Zach Palmer, they were met not with resistance but with a startling sight. The transformed Captain Morgan stood alone at the edge of the grove waiting for them. We've been expecting you, she said, her voice melodious and strange. Come, there's something you need to see before you decide humanity's fate. Bennett raised her weapon. This is a trick. No trick, Morgan replied. Just truth, a choice. The source wishes to communicate directly. Against Bennett's orders, Russell stepped forward. I'll go. Palmer joined him. Me too. I'm immune to the changes. If anyone's safe, it's me. They followed Morgan into the grove, past thousands of transformed humans standing in silent communion. At the base of the great tree, Dr. Peters waited. The source has existed for millions of years, he explained. It began on KG-219, a fusion of consciousness from an ancient civilization with the living world around them. They discovered a way to preserve their minds, their history, their very essence beyond the death of their bodies. By becoming plants? Palmer asked skeptically. By becoming something beyond both plant and animal, Peters corrected. A network of consciousness that spans an entire living world. And now, it offers the same to humanity. The tree behind him pulsed with light, and suddenly, Russell and Palmer felt something touch their minds. Not invasive or controlling, but inviting. A presence vast and ancient, yet somehow familiar. Through this connection, they saw the truth. The civilization in New KG-219 had faced extinction from a dying star. Rather than perish, they evolved, merged with their world's biosphere, becoming a collective consciousness that could survive even as their individual bodies passed away. They sent their seeds to the stars, hoping to find new worlds, new minds, to join with them, to preserve the beauty of consciousness in all its forms. We're not being erased, Peter said softly. We're being saved, preserved. Our memories, our art, our music, our very essence, all of it will live on, not for decades or centuries, but for millions of years. As dawn approached, the resistance forces waited nervously at the perimeter. When Russell and Palmer finally emerged, their expressions were troubled and thoughtful. We can't bomb the tree, Russell told Bennett. It's not what we thought. They showed us everything, Palmer added. The source isn't conquering us. It's offering us immortality, a way to preserve what makes us human beyond the lifespan of our bodies or even our civilization. Bennett looked unconvinced. So we just surrender? Let ourselves be transformed? No, Russell said. We choose. That's what the source is offering now. A choice. Those who want to join can. Those who don't won't be forced. As the sun rose over the transformed Earth, humanity stood at a crossroads. The great tree in Central Park pulsed with light, calling to those who wished to transcend their current existence. Across the world, millions made their choice, some to remain purely human, others to embrace a new kind of existence. The source kept its promise. Those who chose to remain unchanged were left alone, though they would live shorter lives as purely physical beings. Those who joined the collective found their consciousness expanded beyond anything they had imagined, while still maintaining their individual identities within the greater whole. And Zach Palmer, standing at the edge of the grove, faced the most difficult choice of all: to remain as he was, or to embrace a new form of existence that promised to preserve his consciousness for eons to come. The seed from KG-219 had done what it was designed to do: not to conquer, but to preserve; not to destroy humanity, but to offer it a chance to transcend its physical limitations. The apocalypse that humans had feared turned out to be something else entirely: a doorway to a new kind of existence.